made sure we captured the pure nuggets of gold that I'm sure this group is going to drop. No pressure. But does anyone want to talk about the recollections or reflections on the interviewing do's and don'ts, best practices? Please, one at a time. Good. Feeling really good about my life choices and how I'm spending my time right now. This is awesome. Excellent. Good stuff. Hey, it's okay.
And you started the recording, didn't you, in the transcript?
Yeah, we'll edit that out in post-production, as they say. Well, it's good. That's why we record it and put it inside Spark so that we can all review it at our convenience. Today, we're going to be talking about onboarding. It's probably going to be a lighter lift than, the interviewing thing with the stickier sort of questions and legalities and stuff. And so I think this will be good. I'm going to try and leave a little bit of time at the end. So please make notes about things that you that catch your attention, because I will ask for like just one sort of small thing that you'll do afterwards. And just as a reminder, this is part of our ongoing series that we've developed in conjunction with Mary Ellen, and the people team have really done a lot of the groundwork at getting some of the topics together. But we call it ASCENT. It's an acronym, and you can see the words it stands for there. But it sort of reflects the journey that is leadership. And every time I think I've learned a lesson, I have to relearn it. And so it's good for me to get some time to reflect on these. But when you think about leadership, it's hard not to think about accountability, service, courage, right? And the standard bearer of excellence. So everybody taking time out their day, and then on hump day, no less. I appreciate it very much. Keith and Liam, hi, how are you? Okay, jumping right in. We've got some learning objectives. So this is what we're trying to get out of our time. That's why we're taking it. I want to talk a little bit about orientation versus onboarding. What does it look like? What does it feel like for that new employee? Then how do we go past the actual, just the very tactical things that need done day one? And how can we use the concept of a 30, 60, 90-day check-in, formally and informally, to accelerate a new team member's reaching of goals easier and faster, and then work to create an ongoing conversation about excellence, and then again we'll end with a little bit of homework there. Before we jump in, why would we take, like, okay, interviews, I get it, that makes sense to cover, there's some legalities and stuff. Any particular reason why, like, does anybody think this is important? And if so, why? Does anybody think do they know what we mean when we say onboarding and orientation? Just curious. Why do you think we'd spend time on this as a group?
This is Keith. Do you want us to raise our hands to talk and you call on us, or just go ahead and talk?
You know what? Given the overwhelming crickets, you can just go ahead and talk.
No problem. Sounds good. So I recently, roughly in the last 90 days, made a major change to my onboarding process here. We had lost some team members, that went out, and then replacing those with the right people and getting them onboarded in a timely manner, and something we can get them in a van and going quicker than we probably have in the past. I have a major, I don't want to say trust issue, but I don't want to put somebody in a position where I don't feel they're going to be able to succeed in a customer's house. And I don't want them to take that bad experience and you get no, and you just keep going down that pattern. It's hard to change.
Yeah.
So myself, I pulled my lead in, and then I pulled in a few techs that are veterans, and we brought them in and said, hey, we need to streamline this process, make it quicker, and we need to get these guys from nothing or little training in HVAC to being van ready to do maintenance. And I'll tell you, the difference surprised me. It's been very valuable. This week here, this is 8th week, a guy who had absolutely no HVAC experience, 8th week, and he's already out in a van today doing, HVAC tune-ups and doing a phenomenal job, confident, and like I said, surprising what my normal expectations would be. So obviously, I'm sure the value that's going to be in today's session will be good, and I'm looking to learn more to add to my little plan I have now to make it even better. So,
well, good. I appreciate that, and thanks for being honest, right? And I think that's important. On our leadership journey, part of our job, and a big part of it, is to see things as they are, not better or worse. See things as they could be, and then make that happen, right? And so it starts with this self-assessment that you do. Okay, how are we doing, and who else can I bring in? And I just want to say, you raised a really good point about trust. Does anyone else have concerns, worries, or trust issues when it comes to new hires?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we got a pretty good process, similar to, and I'm sorry, I didn't remember your name, but anybody we bring on board here with us, I mean, obviously you have your 90-day trial period, right? But for 30 days minimal, even with experienced techs, that we hire, we do ride-alongs for, with my leads for at least 30 days, just to learn, the ins and outs, the way we do things. All tune-ups aren't created equally. And we like to go above and beyond for our customers. And I totally get what he said is, yeah, trust. It's when you meet somebody, you think you know them. We had an issue last year where, we fell into a bad situation even after the 90-day period.
Yep.
So,
yep. Yeah. So that's the level setting, right? And anybody else can jump in if they have other comments. But to put a bow on it, most of what we do is a distributed workforce, right? Even installers on pairs. There's one indoors, there's one outdoors. A lot of the stuff we do is behind walls or cabinets or panels, and there's a lot of trust, right? And even with the best intentions and the biggest team effort, how easy is it to do that right along with your bottom 5 team members consistently? Like if you do 2 a month, that would be 10 days you'd be out of pocket. That's like sadly not realistic, right? And so when you think about how we set this up and manage expectations, and to Keith's point about that intentionality, right? And we'll get into some of the things Dale said about who else we can bring into this process. It's great that both Dale and Keith mentioned that. So we'll talk about that. And we heard something else, and it was good because this came up in the morning crew as well. Did anyone else have a probationary period? Formal, informal, 90-day? You can just show hands or chime in.
I didn't have anything here prior to creating that one. It was more kind of off the hip, and everyone learns at different pace and what you do. But I think where I had failed and failed to see is if you put a guide in place and realize you're not the only person that's part of developing these people. You're responsible, but you're not the only person. Put that load on your team, and that's why I brought team members in to give input. What do you see when you're working with these guys? What do you think we've done in the past we can do better? It was all that kind of stuff. And then putting it on paper and then giving it to the tech. So the new tech, that is the hire apprentice, whatever you want to call them, they have an expectation of what their week's going to look like. You give it to the team lead and whoever's doing the training and say, this is the expectation this week. These are the things we need them to see. And each week gets a little bit more challenging. And then we also brought them in. I think this was feedback I got from Jackson Comfort on theirs, is we bring them into the office too. So just bring these new guys into the HVAC
Love
field and only do what they're going to be doing daily. Let them sit in the warehouse for a few hours one day to see how things happen back there, how they affect them. Let them sit with the CSRs, listen to phone calls to get an idea. It sounded silly to me and everyone, but it actually was very valuable. So,
Yeah.
thank you, Jackson
Well,
Comfort, for that piece. I robbed it.
whatever. No, this is great, and we're I'm going to share some things, but it's really important that they hear from our peers on this, and especially someone that has gone through the process of before and after. So, and we're going to talk about all a lot of the things that you touched on there, including cross training and breaking down silos and stuff like that. So that's great. But one of the things that we can, how easy is it to find good help? Office, field, support.
Hard.
It's tough.
Right. And how long does it really take before someone like quote gets it and starts carrying their own water?
I think it depends on the position. I think it can take anywhere from 30 to 90 days minimum.
30 minimum. Yep. What about for someone to feel like be in the groove and like going?
Yeah, I think that depends on what kind of experience they bring.
Yep. So when you think about all of the cost and even we do the right thing, we do ride-alongs for 8 weeks, and then all of that process just to find out that it's not a good fit for either of us. I think it was the Department of Labor said it's roughly about 400% of the cost of that position. By the time you've gone through Indeed, talent acquisition has done phone screening, and we get them right, and we set up a truck in a van, or we get software licenses. It's a lot, right? So it makes sense that as we think about the interview process as the beginning, we talk a lot about customer journey in our day job, but our employees have their own. I tend to think of our team members as internal customers, and they have their own journey, right? And these shouldn't feel like choppy, different processes. They should feel like a continuation of a thought out process, right? So that's where this whole foundation series is going to, we'll talk about how do you do a good one-on-one, how do you keep the conversation going, how do you have a good meeting, how do you set goals, how do you have difficult conversations. So I really appreciate the way everyone's showing up, and that's great. So as far as we orientation and onboarding sort of gets used interchangeably. I think this morning the consensus was the orientation is sort of the day one, fill out the paperwork, get the keys, find out where the bathroom is, that sort of stuff. But then the onboarding is that process that Keith and Dale were starting to talk about, which is the milestones in that first little period. But fast forwarding to the first day, who remembers their first day? Who likes their first? Who enjoys that feeling of showing up to a new school, hoping you've got cool sneakers and everybody's cool and going to let you sit with them at lunch and all of that stuff. Okay, that's what I usually get. I shared this morning, like a lot of times my job feels like a lot of first days. I usually go visit somewhere and somebody has to let me in the building, and I hope it's the right building. It's usually a warehouse person, and they have to tell me, who I'm meeting for. And over the last 18 years at my last company, there was this, the analogy we used is sort of like I'd watch people come in, usually a helper in the warehouse, and you just deer in the headlights, sort of like, uh-oh, because, think of all the stuff that's going on in the morning. People are focused and doing their thing, and they walk in, and I'll be honest and say a lot of times I'd forgotten about stuff. I had forgotten somebody was showing up, and so the analogy is it's like falling in a gorilla pit at the zoo. The person shows up and they're just sort of hugging the wall, trying not to make eye contact with the angry silverback, who's clearly the lead installer, right? Okay, so that was funny. Never mind. So that's one end of the experience, but who wants to share what they do on their first day? What do you guys do for someone's first day? And I'm just curious to get a sense of how we all handle it.
I'll go. Maybe
Thank you, Dale.
You're welcome, Eddie. So usually the first day, you know, obviously I do walkthroughs with them, right? I show them the building, and sometimes we do that at the final interview even. You
Sure.
say, hey, let's take a walk, let me show you some things. But I basically introduce them to all the CSRs, show them where the office
Great.
is, where all the facilities are, you know, proceed to give them the world tour, right? Take them out into the warehouse, show them all the parts stock, explain all that and the processes we have here for that. And it's basically just a guided tour for a good hour. You know, spend some time, you know, get to know them a little bit better on a more personal level, and then just show them the ins and outs of where everything is. And hopefully, obviously that happens 2 or 3 times, you know, throughout the weeks. But yeah, usually that's what we do. We take them, introduce them to everybody, show them everything that they need to know where it is, and then we ship them off with one of my leads.
Okay. Let's hear from someone else. Yeah, Davis.
Somewhere I think we found successes. So on the install side, we have like 4 install captains, which are like veterans of the industry. And so we make sure like the first day, obviously, like with walking them around and stuff, we put them with one of these 4 guys that we know like has our core values and like knows how we operate. So there's no like, I don't know, kind of like, you know,
misalignment.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more so they can see how the day generally goes and like how they like tackle the day. I think that's been something that's definitely been beneficial. Unfortunately, we don't have like a, you know, the 30, 60, 90 day like probationary period, which we're definitely like we've been talking about implementing, because I think, you know, people kind of show their true colors throughout that time, right? So you'll find like
they do
avoid issues. So
yeah, no, it's the difference between dating and marrying, right? Like eventually you find out who snores. And so we'll talk more about that because there's some very few people. One of the great things is we've already from this morning's group gathered some checklists. I'm going to share one and we can talk about that 30, 60, 90 because everyone, I think aspirationally wants to do that. But what does that even look like, right? Brandy, I saw your hand was up.
Oh, sorry. One of the things that we do is, especially for field employees, we have them start after 9 o'clock in the morning so that they don't have to be a part of that crazy chaos in the morning. And then the manager can, you know, do the tour with them, have a talk with them, you know, introduce them to people, make them comfortable. The other thing that we implemented recently per our GM is our GM likes to have a meeting with that person to kind of welcome them and kind of let them know, you know, what our company is and what we stand for. And it also shows how at AA we try to have a real open door policy so that, you know, team members know that they're valued and that we're here to help them.
Love it. Yes. One of the concepts that I was challenged by in my last role was to give team members the best first day and the best last day. And when you think about it, in a world 20 years ago when I was a tech, and I joked this morning that, you know, when you left a role, it was sort of like moving to another country. You said farewell, like, because we're dudes. We didn't stay in touch. We didn't have feelings, right? We were just like, okay, see you, you know. But today, you know, your technicians are on text threads or, you know, Facebook groups or connected on social. And, you know, we can talk about the advantages of that as we go through there. So good discussion. The one thing I would say is we can talk about the power of highlighting that first day as a competitive advantage to hiring. Okay, so we'll talk about that as we go through here. A little bit of the agenda here, and if you think about it, what's the first thing that happens when that new team member goes home? What's the first question they're going to get?
How was your day?
Yeah, right. And you know, we don't really get a choice of to whether that question's asked or not, but we can influence how it's answered, right? So whether it's a meeting, a text from the GM, or lunch with someone, somebody this morning says we always get them a hot lunch their first day, or a cold slushy if it's summer, right? And there's these ideas. I don't know. We've all seen the posts on LinkedIn where people come in and there's like a Yeti cup and the hoodie and the potted plant and the lanyard and the right. And I think aspirationally there's something to that, right? There's that you've probably heard me say it 100 times. If you have to tell people you're famous, it's not working. We can tell people who we are, or we can just show them, right? I mean, on one end of the spectrum, you've got people that are like coming into this gift bag and a little personalized card, to all the way on the other end where it's like, wait, are you starting today? Oh, yeah, wait, no, we didn't order your uniforms. What size are you? Yeah, we don't have that size, right? Hey, you can't wear sneakers. Like all of that friction. And it's avoidable as we look through some of the resources. Does that make sense? Like, is that pretty accurate? Cool. And so we're gonna Mary Ellen's gonna be working to look at some of these resources. What is that 90-day? When do we do things? And as we work as a region and as a group, we can start to say what we want that ideal thing to be, and then we can even start doing things like next year. We can maybe put some things in the budget, the budget for new hire swag. There's everything from I know companies that they set them up with the Red Wing store nearby, and they get custom, they get measured and they get a really nice pair of boots. Somebody was talking about those coolers that you plug in and they can heat and cool stuff. When you think about what you want that experience to be like, again, there's cost to that. And what if it doesn't work out? But that just puts some more pressure on us to revisit the best practices for interviewing, right? So measure twice, cut once, and then have this phenomenal experience, because just like the partner, that new team member that came over, they were like, oh, where are you going? Oh, I heard they're PE. Oh, good luck. I heard that's a meat grinder, right? And you better believe that they're getting hit up that first week. Hey, how is it? Is it really bad? Is it all numbers? And for that person to be able to go, actually, no, listen to this, right? I had lunch with the GM yesterday. They sent me home at 3:00, right? Look at all this stuff, and they'll send pictures, and that can start to do a lot of your culture building in the community, so that you don't have to pull, but people are starting to push themselves towards you because of what they've seen, right? So again, you can't just do it once on Insta and #hustle grind and think that's going to be it. But as people start to see how you take care of not just field employees, but all employees, we can start to use that to our advantage to have a competitive edge over the labor. You guys buy that? All right. Customization, I think this is, we'll share some resources, but look, if Grandma Finkelstein has always made cookies for employees first day, by all means, keep doing that stuff, right? If you always get a t-shirt from this year's Little League team that we sponsored, keep doing that, right? But how do we take the best practices and make it our own? So let's talk about, what do we need to do before day one? If we start to think through what we want that optimum experience to be like, if we were designing that, what are some of the things we'd have to do before day one? You're right. We'd probably have to do things on the hub and pre-employment, and get them logins and passwords and iPads and a fuel card and all of these sort of things. We'd probably have to make sure the truck was inventoried, or that the software licenses and a new headset had been delivered for the new employee, right? Because think about it, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And for most of us, I know Jackson's usually the cheapest company in their market, but what about the rest of us? Are we the cheapest? I'm going to get them to unmute one way or the other. But no, we're a premium, right? And And so we're asking people to show up with their head in the game, be prepared, be proactive. And yet we have to turn that light back on ourselves and say, well, how did we do? Right. So part of this checklist is really about onboarding. One of the simplest things I've seen is someone in the office is designated at the last place. It was the receptionist or, one of the office team. When somebody was starting the night before, they put up a big printed welcome sign. They put it on the front door, they put it on the back door, they put one in the break room, and at the dispatch counter. And that's because it was simple, but it wasn't just like, hey, welcome, Tony. It was, hey, it's some exciting news. Tony's joining the team, a little bit, maybe a picture of Tony, but then like, make sure you say hello, right? Because it's a very intimidating environment in the blue collar world, right? And that's changing. That's not everyone's cup of tea anymore, right? All things being even, if you give me a choice, I'd rather not take the hard road, right? So this pre-onboarding, you can simply designate a person on your behalf. Hey, part of your checklist is that, HR or the manager lets Susie know that this is the person coming, here's the picture, and then that happens, right? The other part of the pre-onboarding and continuation of onboarding is every manager needs to take individual responsibility for that experience, and it should be an experience that is yours and yours alone, with a little asterisk. You're allowed to have deputies, right? Your job is to define the experience and make sure that everything's in place, but you're allowed to be busy and you're allowed to take a day off. Your job, if that's the case, is to make sure that the person don't just, if it's anything like me, it's like my first was like, hey, Eddie, can you go meet so-and-so out in the warehouse? It's their first day. And I was like, sure, I can do that. But like, there was no expectation of what that should be like. If you define that, you can actually have one or two people that are designated as your backups. So if you get pulled into a fire drill, that experience still happens. Think about all the processes and policies we put in place in the field and in our day-to-day job to make sure if someone calls out, there's a process, right? It happens. Well, it's the same with this. You don't have to do it all on your own. That makes sense? Does anybody have a number two that that if you ask them, they would do exactly the same as you? Big opportunity. All right. And it takes some of that stress off of you. The last part about that, I will say, and we'll talk about this as one of the handouts, is as each of us have different teams, we should be meeting and talking in our team about our expectations when someone comes in the building. It's okay for us to say, hey, by the way, if you see a stranger, introduce yourself. Like, think about how simple that is. We rarely, like, it's not just about you. We want to make sure everybody's welcoming, right? Stuff we learned in kindergarten. Make eye contact, say hello, say welcome. Oh, I don't know, smile, right? I know some of us forget those muscles, but they're there.
I know that here at our place, when we get a new hire, the first day they see every manager and supervisor in the building, and we have a checklist of everything that they go over with that individual, and everybody has something that they are specialized at that they go over with that individual. So
love it.
They get to see everybody, they get to meet everybody, and you're then, as you check off the stuff on your list, you take that individual to the next supervisor. Yes. And you introduce them. That's how we do it here. We've done it here always since I've been here for 7-8 years.
Yep. I think we've done something similar. You put them with the sales coordinator and say, hey, Tracy, this is John. He's going to be sitting with you for 2 hours. Can you walk him over to Helen at project coordination for me when you're done, right? And that's, I will ask Keith and Dean, thank you for sharing that. If you have that handy and you're comfortable, drop those checklists or docs in the group chat here, because we are going to consolidate them and share the best practices. So I think that's really important. The other thing that we developed was this idea of a buddy or a mentor. So we talked about it this morning, and Dale, in fact, I think everybody's mentioned it, like there is this sort of passing out ceremony where they have to go with a veteran and get sort of blessed, right? But one of the interesting things is we found we didn't necessarily always put them with the most technical or the most senior, because sometimes that person was a bit of a grumpy bear, and that's okay, right? We just want to make sure the person comes back for day 2, right? So sometimes you have these internal champions. They're never going to be a senior tech. They're never going to be, the warranty stopper, but this is the way they can contribute. They're really warm. They sort of bleed your values without it being performative. And you know that person is going to catch the essence of what you care about. They're going to see how we handle difficult customer, all of that. And again, so I would encourage you to think through who those buddies are. And I would suggest that you think about this in the term of year 1, right? And this is another sort of micro promotion that we give our team members in a world where there's only one service manager or maybe one team captain. Having a sense of progression in your career is great. And again, remember, we're giving other people on our team the ability to contribute, because it's difficult to leave a team. You get offered $2 more an hour and you don't really feel connected. That's one thing. But if you feel you've helped build this team, man, you feel there's some pride there. There's some ownership. And so I encourage you to think about that. The other thing is, throughout the year, there's all kinds of stuff that comes out. Like, hey, I heard I'm starting on call next month. Oh, what's that about? Or maybe there's some questions you just don't want to ask the boss. Maybe you've asked the boss once and they told you, but you forgot, you didn't really understand. There's these things like, hey, do we work Martin Luther King Day or are we off, right? Not important, but just something. And one of the reasons I'm going to challenge us on that is when we look at employee engagement, and one of the toughest, most challenging questions for me was when we took a survey and it said, do you have a best friend at work? And I was like, what? They literally have to pay me to be here. What are you talking about? And of course it makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't you want someone that you're connected with? Like a foxhole buddy, a battle buddy, right? Even just sometimes to vent. So I think about who on your team, doesn't need to be the most senior, can be a good ambassador for you. And that's something that there's people that do really well at. And it's not a full-time gig, right? It's just someone that they can text and say, hey, I'm technical, non-technical process, questions about healthcare and all of that stuff that they don't want to flag up. So does anybody have a buddy or mentor program going? All right. Well, we can look at that. There's usually some sort of ride along. Hey, make sure the person doesn't steal things, and they don't have all kinds of potty mouth in the customer's home, and they're not like flicking cigarettes out, right? Davis.
With our captain system, because we have the 4 captains, you're assigned to one of their teams, so they kind of become your first touch point for questions like that, because they, like I said, they're veterans, they've been here a long time, and anything they can't answer, obviously if the new hire doesn't feel comfortable, say, reaching out to me, the captain will do that. So that seems to work in the past, at least. So.
Yeah, and I think there's as we get to a size where you need you don't need a whole other service manager. These team captains are really good roles, and I'd encourage us all to open ourselves up to that, because it really helps for a lot of reasons. Safety and compliance, I think this is the sort of thing I would tell you that, in the office, you certainly want to go over, where the fire exits are and, who the safety champions are, where the trip hazard is, and, stay out of that cupboard. There's dragons in there, all of that sort of stuff. But in the field, we want to be even a bit more intentional. We should have some sort of sign off about driving. It can be one of your veteran techs. It could be, if you want to really reinforce how important that is, it could be you. And I don't care if it's round the block for 4 minutes. You just want to see if they use turn signals. Do they know what mirrors are for? Are they aware they're driving a billboard? Right? Does everything fall off the shelf as they go around the corner? Because it's one of the biggest liabilities we had. We had 300 vehicles on the road every day, and it was our biggest liability, right? And we sort of take it for granted. I often say if you brought a brand new sort of Ford something 250, would you let your buddy drive it? No. Why? Because he's a terrible driver. Okay, but he gets to drive our stuff, right? So somebody needs to think about that. And then the thing with certain power tools, you know, a process to make sure the first time someone uses, you know, a hammer drill, we want to make sure they know how to do that. The first time somebody pulls a ladder off a truck, we want to watch that happen, right? Anybody that had one of their key players out on light duty knows that can leave a big hole. And also, you know, when someone's had a rotator cuff surgery and they're been pulling parts in the warehouse for 3 months over winter, it's not always the easiest thing to get them back in a van and grinding it out, right? So just some things to think about there. We can talk about how we measure from there. But as we're going, any thoughts on any of that stuff? Is it helpful? Yeah, all right. So again, let's think about and welcome's a good word, right? If we were to welcome someone to our home, we wouldn't let them walk in and just ask us questions, right? We'd meet them at the door and all of that stuff. And then have that as a bit of a continual process. So here's some basic examples. And again, I'll share a lot here, but warm welcome, team, you know, salespeople, we always started at 9. Field, we did do early. Office staff, think about when you're the busiest and most distracted. It's usually the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So there's things you can do there. Make sure we get through all of the, you know, HR stuff, and I'll show you some examples. Don't skip the tour. Introduce them to their buddy, and then this idea of, okay, what are we checking off? And we can go into that. And here's sort of what it might look like. Let me pull this over here. This is one, and I just pulled this up. This was from my last place after we embarrassed to see how many people we onboarded without this. But what we did was we just looked at everything and we said, okay, what is that person expected to touch, talk about, or be responsible for? And let's just write it down. Okay. So you can see certainly, you know, there's all of the HR stuff, and here's your door code and all of these things. But we want to make sure that that's there. Then I think Dale talked about like the tour, the walk around, the introduction. IT is going to have, you know, it's stuff, and we want to make sure they have all of their pieces there. We had 400 employees, so we had a safety person that went through all of our PPE. But you know, can't do swag. We got these little drawstring bags for construction guys that had the hard hat. But everybody else, it had a nice pair of gloves, ear protection, eye protection, you know, eye wipes, you know, little things like that could be good. And then, yeah, more of a formal sort of like, hey, when we think about the job description, very rarely do we, you know, it might be in the welcome packet, but very rarely do we reflect on it. And so this is the time to go through these and really start to manage and set expectations. Because remember, we have that 90-day period for a reason. We don't have to wait for day 90 to start managing those things. The best way to exceed expectations is to set them. And we have all of this, or we have access to it. And so, yeah. And then any policies we had. And so we just said, look, if we want them to know how to talk to dispatch when code 1015, you know, it's perfectly okay to say, hey, our office team works really hard. So one of the things we were really proud of is we talk to each other like teammates, right? Because every once in a while someone loses the plot and starts yelling at the office. That's not cool, right? And this is the time to address it. But you get the idea. We talked about any of their technical stuff that we'd want to know, and this could be licensing. It could be, you know, their goals they have about going from a journeyman to a master or anything there. And then communication training. So this is, think of the to the service system, everything in there, we want to make sure they know it, right? If it's part of our system, we want to know it because this is the document that's going to stay with them for 90 days, right? You'll notice that we have 2 columns. Any ideas why we have 2 columns? One for the trainer, one for the employee? What do you think? Go for
I
it,
believe
Abby.
he's correct.
Accountability, basically. So the employee is, making sure that they're presenting this to, or the trainer is presenting this to the employee, and then the employee can sign off, understand, making sure they understand what they're being asked of.
Yeah, because that's a great summary, Abby. Like I don't know if you've ever had a team captain or a veteran say, "Well, I don't know, man. I told them 4 times." Okay. Well, if that was the job, congratulations, but the job was to help them understand it. So if that person doesn't understand it, it's not done yet, right? And similarly, we've all met people who are like, me and Willis Carrier were like that. I basically invented air conditioning, so you're gonna have no problems with me. And then we see them in the wild, we're like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be a project, right? So it's just that trust and verify on both sides. Go ahead, David.
Definitely think something like this would be beneficial for my team just because a lot of the time, like if a mistake is made or like a process isn't followed, and then you have the conversation with the person, they're like, oh, I didn't know, or something like that. But so like, and then sometimes you try to like play the other side and you're like, oh, I guess maybe they didn't know. I did tell them, maybe it was like too much information at once. So
And
yeah,
there's a lot we cover, right?
for sure.
There's a lot, and that's where I like this idea of like giving it to the employee and saying, okay, because I will probably have them sit or ride with different people, and I just want to like this way I can give this to my lead if I'm a helper and say, hey, here's what I've covered so far. Okay, great. Well, it looks like you still need to do this. Why don't we do that for today? So it makes it less like most buddy systems are really passive. Like it happens a lot in CS, right? And you're going to sit and watch Sharon take calls today. Well, that's good and it's helpful and we can pick up a lot. But ideally, Sharon needs to know what her role is in that day. It's not just to do your job and let someone watch. When you finish that call, you turn and you say, okay, now did you see how I had to send that email to accounting? That's because so-and-so did this and such and such. In that case, we do this. Right. It's a very active back and forth process. It shouldn't be like boring. It shouldn't be quiet. It should be a transferring of information, right? So, and when you start to look through this, yeah, you can understand why people might get a little wigged out, right? One of the things we do is we have them do an action. Like if you're riding along, I want to see you use the price book. I want to see if you get the same thing I do. Oh, you throw the capacitor in with a motor because the motor's expensive? Interesting, right? Oh, your last place, the venting was always included in the water heater? Okay. Like that's how we start to surface these differences. To David's point, it's very difficult to hold someone accountable to something they don't think they've had explained to them. And so this is your trust but verify. And then everything that and this started as a 1-page thing. And then we just, every time we learned a lesson, we're like, okay, add it to the list. And then every form that they filled out, part of that writing between jobs or is there an end of day or start day? We talk about, okay, what's the point of this? What's the point of that? Explain this to me. And we start to hear a much more deeper sense of what they are. And then any piece of literature that we want them to hand out, somebody should probably hear what they're going to say about it. We had one tech who was telling everybody, he heard somewhere along the lines that, yeah, humidifiers save you money because you don't have to turn your thermostat up as high. While technically that's true because we do register comfort relative to moisture, I don't want a customer thinking they're going to save $50 a month for this, right? So do we know what people are saying? Do we know if they tell them, yeah, it's a 5-inch filter, but you're going to have to change it. You check it every month and change it as needed, right? And by the way, it's $50, $100, like what the UV bulbs. Do we know if they're telling people that those bulbs need replaced periodically, right? So again, think about all the things that you ask your people to talk about. And if you've never set that sort of guardrails for how we talk about these things, it'd be good to do. And then, yeah, everything that we ask them to do in the field or in Service Titan in the office or whatever it is. If you're going to be closing a job, do you know the difference between internal work, recall, or warranty? Do you know how you should be closing that? Somebody should go through that with you. Do you clean a flame sensor with a dollar bill or sandpaper, right? Well, depending on who trained you at your last job or Botech or whatever, it'd probably be good to know that. Again, none of these are going to, like, we all survived many, many years without something like this. But this is just an example of when you start and you bring your team into this, you really start to get, you know, a lot of power. And then you can start to see all these areas. It also helps people understand how much opportunity they have to grow into these different aspects of the world. Like, you might be a refrigerant king, but know nothing about hydronics. Okay, well, that sounds like a growth edge, right? So what we did at the end of these 90 days is we'd have a self-assessment, and then we'd have the manager do one as well. But if I go through this and I ask them to rate themselves on this, what could I use this for?
What jobs they're getting, like where they're able to be utilized most efficiently.
We could certainly fill dispatch in on that, right? That would probably be handy. What else? Yeah, go ahead.
So performance evaluations and like one-to-ones and growth, career paths.
There you go. So this is what turns this 30, 60, 90 into a seamless experience, because this is going to be your development path. You can pick which one that you want to start on, but part of our one-on-one, if I have a one-on-one every week, you know, service, it's very common. Install, it's rarer. But either one of those weeks or a portion of that time in that one-on-one, we should be talking about, hey, because our ability to have this conversation helps us have conversations about compensation, because we know that's going to come up at some point. And compensation is relative to what you can perform, right? And so, you know, that's where it's like, well, hey, we've been talking about getting certified on water conditioning or taking some training about water heaters so we can get you to more calls. How's that going? Oh, you haven't started. Well, let's put a plan together so that we can make you more money, right? So this is, and again, it allows people to have a little bit of hand in their destiny. It also checks self-awareness. If everybody's like a 5 on everything and they've just got a case of the Chexies, that's not good either, right? But it's good to know who you're running with. And again, this seems like a lot. I'm going to share this with you guys. It doesn't need to be as extensive as this. This was done many, many years ago. Quite proud of the fact that no ChatGPT was involved. You'll know that because the grammar will be terrible and there will be typos. But that's, you know, I'll give you a starting place. What I really recommend you doing with this is taking this into your team meetings. You know, we have a lot of service meetings, install meetings. This is where we can use this to talk about how we preemptively deflect some of these challenges that come up, or more importantly, you know, those sessions where it feels like we're just bitching. It's like, okay, great. Did we train anybody on that? Is that on our list? Okay, what do we need to put on this list to avoid this happening again, right? Probably on here somewhere is like, hey, we'll pay for parking tickets, but we're not paying for speeding tickets, right? That's sort of like, if it doesn't live here, this can be your collection place for all of that somewhat useful information. Make sense?
Sure.
Would that be useful if we shared that with you guys? Again, don't feel like you have to invent all of that overnight, but it is easier when you get team buy-in. So you can start to see what this looks like, and we've got these examples here. The one thing I'll tell you is this 30 to 90 thing. Does anyone do a 30-day check-in, formally or informally? Okay,
Informally.
Great place, informally, right? Great place to start is when you meet them day one, just put a tickler in your calendar to call them. It could be as little as a text, especially 30 days. They're still getting up to speed on a lot of things. Hey man, just checking in. How is it? But your 60 days should probably start to look at your paperwork, and it's a great time to check. Hey, how's Billy treating you? Are you learning things from him? Is he Be nice to you, will you please come back, right? And then 90 day is really where you start to bring in your KPIs back to the job description, targets, and that's what's setting you up for your one-on-one conversations moving forward, right? But it's literally as simple as just putting something in your calendar, and you can delegate that to team captains or whatever. But I always like to shoot a note. In fact, every anniversary and birthday, we had 400 employees. So some days there was like 4 people in each list. One day, because we had a program like Livefire, one day we had like 25. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to say to all these people, right? But whatever you want it to be, just start simply, but be intentional. And again, think about who you would like to be. So I've got some slides in here that you guys can use. We're going to give you this presentation for each of the different types of roles, just to think about, well, what would these roles require? What would that form look like for a CS agent or, accounting support? And you ideally you're coming out with this sort of to-do list as a team. Again, it's not all on you. You want lots of people to help you carry this, because you can be an enlightened guru, but if the rest of the team is kind of burly and that's something you want to work on. And so working together as a team to talk about how important it is, because everybody wants to have good colleagues, right? I'm tired of you hiring shitbirds. Come on, man, where are you finding these people? Okay, well, how about you help me by being a team that somebody wants to join? It's not all on you're responsible, but you get to hold your team accountable for the help you get on that. Does that make sense? Ultimately, it is your responsibility, but you get to work with your team to hold them accountable for this overall experience. And again, you're responsible, but if you're allowed to take a day off, and then when you come back, hey, Stephen, did Anthony start? Okay, did we get the signs up? Did he get your swag? Okay, who's you riding with? Okay, did you check in with him morning too? Okay, good. Right? But you can only do that if you've started. And again, we started with 1 page. One of the things I do at the end of every week, I have the person, depending on the role, sometimes I have them take the last 30 minutes of the day for someone riding along with someone. They could be in the truck on the drive home. What did you learn today? Capture your learnings. But definitely the end of the first month, first week, first month, 60 days, 90 days. Tell me what you learned, because this then allows you to understand the experience from their side. And it also helps you go, you know what? They covered that and that's not on our list. This becomes you get 2 or 3 employees to do that. Now all of a sudden you dump that in ChatGPT, there's your list, right? You just need to format it appropriately. So think about these. And then when you think about some of these things, we talked about, I know we're almost at time, so I'll keep it brief, but the cross-functional introductions, one of the best things I ever did was, how service techs seem to think that the office staff do nothing except sit around all day till about 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then just try and ruin service techs' days by giving them calls, right? Well, we've all lived that. You know what really fixes that is having them sit in the call center. And if you've got a real surly burly person, put that gorilla on the phone and watch them turn into a pussycat, because they will get a whole level of, it's hard talking to customers. They call in and say, hey, how much is this going to cost? When can you get there? And you're like, sir, did we capture your name? Okay. And you capture 2 of the notes out of the 75 that we ask our CS team to gather, right? And all of a sudden there's an appreciation. Sales, they work in install for at least a week, because what we want to see is not just the job, but hey, did you see how you got sent to run to the supply house for that? That's because we didn't include that in the job packet. No one took a picture, all of that stuff. And so what you can find out is when people start to come and say, that's they didn't do this, they didn't do this. Like, hey, when they sat with you, did you cover that? Well, now all of a sudden, takes a village, right? So, feedback is a gift, but now what are we doing with it? And so it also breaks down silos and makes all hand team meetings less weird if everybody sort of knows a person in a different department, right? So think about your pain points and think about cross-training, right? So anyway, we can go through here, but a bit of a checklist. But as we close in on our time, let's just take a second and think about if you want to share something that you thought was interesting or that you heard, maybe Keith, Dale, and Dean share. Abby and Brandy, like what do you think? I'm going to ask you for one thing that you're going to do as a result of this, and I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that. And while I'm saying this, I would tell you that you can take this. We took the interview in one and we put it in Spark, and we're going to put this one in Spark as well. But you can take this, and if you have a leadership team meeting on like an L10 or a weekly managers meeting, this is a good place to do an abbreviated version of this. And then if you want, I can come in and do like a 15-minute snapshot of this, and then you guys can take it and run with it, because I think what we really want is a nice, consistent experience across the team. Anyway, Brandy.
I'm going to take away from this is to make sure that we're bolstering up our current procedure. I think we all get really busy and we're all going in so many different directions that although our intent is good, I think we could polish up what we do to make it even better. And if you can send me that form that you have, I would like to kind of implement it with a form that I have. And I think that's the whole, like what I'm getting out of this. So I thank you.
Just send a stamped addressed envelope to, we'll absolutely get that out to you guys. And I'm showing my age there. Half the people probably don't know where that comes from, but anyway, and I love the idea of you got to customize it, right? You got to make it sure, but please don't, that you are only one person. Understanding your process and having other people that can pinch hit for you and take chunks of your day just so that you can not be overwhelmed by the end of that first week. It really starts to hum when everybody knows not just when they're going to have the team member, but what the purpose of their time together is. Can't stress that enough. It's not just, it's the equivalent of trying to take the biology textbook and put it under your pillow and sleep at night and hope it goes in your brain. Osmosis is a shitty trainer, right? Intentionality works. Go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, I think so. We have a lot of these implemented here, but you gave me some more ideas to expand on that. Like we have a checklist, a hiring list that we go through. And I think my team spoke about that this morning a little bit. But seeing some of the things on your checklist, we can definitely grow there. Probably do, make some adjustments with their first day. Like a small gift package. I never really thought about, maybe taking them to lunch the first day. I often do that throughout the year with my guys on touch points and stuff, or if we're on jobs working together. So it's opening up my eyes a little bit more of where we can make the improvements with what we have, right?
I love where your head's at, Dale, and I would encourage you, take the last 3 or 4 people that you put through that process,
right,
and just take a half hour, get some cookies and say, hey, what was awesome? What surprised you? What didn't you learn for 6 months down the road and you wish somebody had told you, right?
Yeah.
Great. Who's next? Let's go round the horn here. 2 down, a bunch to go. Don't be shy.
I'll tell you, as in management here and being the warehouse manager, the fleet manager, and the safety champion, I don't do a lot of hiring. I finally hired on one individual that is like my number 2 guy. But going forward with our manager or our checklist that we have for orientation stuff, what I really liked was at the bottom with ranking of where these new hires stand in relationship to 30 days, 60, 90 days, and ranking their knowledge base. I think that's something that we can bring to the team that would be very beneficial to all those that are hiring, the service managers, the install managers, stuff like that.
Well, and in your role, I would absolutely hope that people are coming to you and saying, as the safety person, what should we be covering day one? Your thumbprints and DNA should be all over other hiring managers' intake forms. Okay, Tanya, your hand was up, and then we'll go in order. So you're next.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Honestly, it's just going to be putting something more formal together. We are a small company, and it's kind of depending on when we hire people, what's going on, everything. sometimes we can spend a lot of time with them, and other times it's
Yeah.
it's okay, quick, okay, go. And it's a little bit more formal.
And that allows you to bring other people in, because that is the reality. I had the best of intentions, but I can't do everything. And I need to relinquish trust. And the only way I'm going to trust is if I verify, right? And this checklist, Keith, this is like a therapy session. If you got them
It's
to
really,
initial in blood.
I've been here 11 years though, and I've seen a lot of people come and go. So the trust is hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's why I wanted it right. Team Jackson, then Davis, then Liam.
Yeah, same with us. I think that we have a lot of the basis of this down, but just having the formal checklist and the self-survey, I think sets all of us up for success. All the expectations are, communicated on both sides. So that's going to be helpful.
Yeah, when you think about most of the stuff on that list, you learn, but usually because you did it wrong and someone told you. And that's just like, it's not bad, but it's not a great feeling, right? It doesn't make you feel like a big hitter. So getting in front of that is really good. Thank you for sharing. Davis.
Definitely using that checklist and modifying it to our own, just so first off, you could see exactly where people stand and like what they need help with for future trainings, or where to put them on installs, or who to put them with. But also for the everything that the different steps for the checklist between like the manager and the employee, just making sure everyone's on the same page. I think there's been I might be on my fault, but there's a disconnect between some people of certain things within the company, and I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. So. Well,
listen, that's great. And again, I was at my last place for 18 years, and I think I did this my last 3, right? So it's not like I figured this out. And you just start where you're at. And of course, when a team's small and everybody kind of knows, and we've all worked together, we know how everybody does it. But 9 times out of 10, if I've never told a guy how I want to install a boiler, they're probably going to install it the way their last boss told them. And that might be okay, but maybe it's not. All right. So it's perfectly natural, Davis, and I love where your head's at. Okay, Liam, then Keith.
Yeah, I'd just say, like a lot of other people said, just formalizing things. I think specifically what hit home for me was we do rely on ride-alongs when we onboard someone. You try and put them with a good technician that can show them our process, how we do things. But we don't really have that formalized. There's not really a list for the training technician to go through and sort of sign off that they did cover these certain things. And that has definitely been, a thing where, I'm assuming that something is talked about, and then finding out
news
later,
is right. News is good news, right? If you don't get a complaint, it must be working fine.
So that's great. And right? I also really loved the idea of having some of the technicians sit with the CSRs and, see what they go, what their day is like, because
if you go put those people together and let them appreciate their different roles, right?
From my perspective, going from being a tech in the field to doing, the management side of things, like it really was sort of eye-opening. So that could be some really good perspective for them.
Excellent. And Keith.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, what everyone's already kind of pointed out is the same thing, but also appreciate the time for this meeting and everyone talking and sharing their thoughts and opinions and stuff. But like I said, I just recently started ours to get a version, and as you had at your company before, it takes time. You're going to keep building and building and building, altering whatever that is. But I think the big thing, at least on my side, what I've learned is, as leaders, we're responsible for it all, but if we try to do it all, we're not going to be successful. It's getting everyone else involved and giving that ownership. So yes, I've built a lot of trust recently. I've learned a lot this past year, and I've learned the most of it probably in the last month or so.
Listen, it's great when it finally happens.
My goal is just to keep developing and to implement this stuff, because it's one thing to have an idea, but when you put it in place and you have something to check and follow up, and the accountability side of it, and it's two sides, like you had on there. You have the trainer marking what they did, and you have the person being trained marking that they understood it. And one of my things I did put in where rather than being just like 30, 60, 90, and I haven't fully lived up to this as much as I'd like to. I try to, but I haven't been able to do it weekly. But on my onboarding plan, at the end of every single week with these new hires, I want to sit down with them one-on-one, interview them, check how it's going and what we can do better, what they thought. And I wrote down a lot of stuff here with these new hires. Like, I'm going to pull probably 4 or 5 of our newest hires we have in across all departments, bring them in for a meeting and say, hey, here's our onboarding process. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? What would you add? What would you remove? That kind of stuff. So we can just get better at it here.
I'm going to tell you, Keith, you're going to hear a bunch of like, we didn't do that. And you're like, oh, you're going to be disappointed. But it's okay. That's how it works. The last thing I'll tell you, I was at KOP yesterday and it was a tech meeting and it was, hey, we're getting ready for tune-ups. This is a great way to build out, take 10 minutes of your team meeting. Say, hey, when we check a blower, what do we do? And you're going to find like people, capacitors, well, if it's under 5, then it's going to be replaced. And people are like, what? No, I just tell the customer, let them know, right? And you're going to find out, you're going to tighten up your the variability in your current performers as well. And they're going to help to get this. And so as they're going out and doing it, they're sort of holding themselves accountable because they just said they want all these new helpers to do X, Y, and Z. So they have to do it as well, right? They have to clean the drain. It's just like they don't got choice, right? So again, these are really you can take these in chunks and 10 minutes of a team meeting. It's a great icebreaker. People start to get used to. All right, guys, we're going to look at these 3 pieces of literature breaking pairs. What did you like about what they said? Who thinks they've got the best one? Who was blown up? Who's ready to buy one? And then they can do that for the group. And then that's one of the ways. We can put that in there. This is how we want people trained. So the senior techs hear what you want them to say. Because if you've got 14 captains, there's still going to be variability between those, right? So it's just, again, it doesn't need to be done overnight. And it's great to pull out and refresh every once in a while. This is a journey. But again, if we have a really good interview process, we've been consistent, and honestly, I'd be thrilled if everybody just put up welcome signs on the day of new hires. I think that would be like, and not acting surprised when we see them. But we'll share all this information, and we'll continue to work. Keep the feedback coming. Was this helpful today? I know it seems like a silly thing, but
yeah.
If you don't take the time, you never take the time. So I appreciate everybody making it a priority today. This is really important. And Mary Ellen's let me guinea pig with the Midwest, and so we're gonna spread this Foundation ASCENT series to the other regions based on some of your guys' feedback. But I'll summarize this. I'll put the notes out. What we're trying to do is create a bit of a certification around this. So it's one thing to go through it, but there's usually some homework required. And if everybody does the homework, we'd love to give you a certificate, put it in your file, talk about it in your development review with your boss, and say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing to level up, right? And it's great for your team to see you doing that and talking about, hey, I was in a class learning about this, because we should model what we expect, right? And so for your team to hear that you're still learning, it's great, right? So, okay, I'm going to stick around if anyone's got questions, but otherwise, look for the email follow-up. And guys, please take care of each other, but take care of yourself. Yeah, I appreciate you all.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care all.
Thanks, Eddie.
Eddie, that when you send us out your information, is it going to include that onboarding checklist that you showed in this presentation?
Only if you give me $5. No,
Oh, that's
it will.
right. I already asked. My apologies.
No,
I'll send the $5 via courier.
No, it's good. Mary Ellen's probably gonna share that for us. But yes, we'll absolutely get that out to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, a bunch of AI note takers and Keith. What's on your? You good, Keith? Thanks for sharing. By
Yeah, I'm good. I was just making sure if there was anything else that came up. That's all.
Same.
No, I'm good. I will tell you that it's really like they kind of expect to hear from me. I really appreciate you sharing, Keith, and just being candid. Like, hey, I'm trying to do this. It's not quite there yet. Here's what I've learned. That's how we all get there, and we're all in this together. So I really appreciate you sharing.
Not a problem anytime.
All right.